Meeting of the December 5th WVU Faculty Senate will come to order. We do have a quorum today. The minutes from the November 7th Faculty Senate meeting were distributed with your agenda. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? All right, hearing none, the minutes are approved as written and will be posted to the Faculty Senate webpage. President Gee's running a little bit late today, so we're going to get started with the report from Provost Reed.
Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Monday. Hope you all had a great Thanksgiving. We are in the final stretch, as you know, just a couple more weeks, and we are into the holiday break, which I know will be very much appreciated by all. I don't have a lot of new information to share today. I want to allow as much time as possible for discussion of the about the draft promotion and tenure and annual evaluation document. Tracy Morris and Chris Staples will be providing an overview of the process that we have followed to date to share the document, solicit feedback, and make changes as a result of that feedback. As a reminder, we agreed to postpone the Senate vote on the draft document until the January faculty meeting, giving faculty around 8 weeks, a little over 8 weeks, to view the final draft and to share any remaining concerns that they may have with their faculty senators. A couple of other items. One is regarding a new benefit for graduate students. Beginning in January, the university plans to extend our current modification of duties policy for faculty to graduate student assistants who were similarly may be going through a significant personal circumstance, such as the birth of a child or a major medical issue that requires time away from work. Other universities have adopted similar policies to support their graduate students, and we're very excited to follow suit. So you'll be hearing more about that in January. We are going through the final process right now of determining exactly how students will apply for these modification of duties and where their applications will go and some of those fine points. But we'll be excited to roll that out. As another item, I understand that some faculty have expressed concerns about a new Office of Global Affairs policy that impacts international recruitment of visiting scholars. And so I asked Amber Brignoli from our office just to take a minute or two, explain the new policy and answer any questions that you might have. So do you want to come up, Amber?
Okay, hello. Yes, one of the big changes that we are implementing for visiting scholars. So this does not impact a permanent hire that your office may be pursuing on a work visa. This is for visiting scholars that come over on a J visa. We want to try bringing these individuals over in cohorts starting in 2023. Couple of reasons for this. Currently, these individuals arrive on our campus kind of haphazardly. You know, they can show up at any time. There's not really an ebb and flow. We're seeing, particularly coming out of the pandemic, as embassies and consulates start opening, it's really unpredictable how long their visa wait may need to be. They're showing up with, you know, waits for Social Security appointments, waits for payroll processing, things like that. On average, from the time our office is notified that a department would like to bring a visiting scholar to campus, it takes about 6 to 8 weeks at the fastest for them to get here. Okay, that's assuming, you know, no wait for a visa appointment. So we're going to space these cohorts 6 weeks apart. And for a few reasons that we're going to do this. Ideally, if you reach out to our office and say, yes, we would like to bring a visiting scholar to campus, we can look at the State Department's current wait for a J visa, which is what these individuals come on from the country where this person will be traveling from, and assign them to a cohort start date based on that wait period. So we can tell you right off the bat, okay, your start date of 8 weeks from now is not going to work because it's a 6-month wait for a visa. So please reach out to us as soon as you're even considering bringing a visiting scholar to campus so we can see what that wait time is. The other reason that we're doing this cohort-based system is the individuals will be able to arrive as a group. We will pre-schedule social security card appointments, payroll processing, onboarding of the university, getting them their ID cards, getting them added into the system. So all of that will be more seamless than, now they show up and they have to kind of do everything on their own. Even though I know our office and other offices of the university support them, they are still kind of out there by themselves. Okay, lastly, we are doing this because we are actually required by the federal government to do acculturation, assimilation, bringing them on board types of programs. Right now, it's kind of hard to do. If we schedule a program, we have people that have been here for months that maybe are well past needing an orientation, and others that arrived 2 days ago and they're still jet lagged and they're overwhelmed. So now we're going to be able to target our messaging based on how long these cohorts have been here. We'll be able to track them better, and we'll be able to offer them more programming support, as well as to their families also. We know that for certain cohorts and their start dates, we're going to need to send them information on the school system, or on, the holidays are coming up and the university is going to be closed. So it might take you longer to get your payroll paperwork back, things like that. So I understand this is a new change. We've sent out some information via email to all of our, frequent flyer departments, as well as our academic leaders. We've also had some information sessions. To date, no one has reached out to me with concerns. So if you have concerns, or there are issues in your department, or you think this is going to implement your work, please let me know. I'm happy to talk with you. I'm the approval authority for exceptions, and I think I'm a pretty reasonable person. So if you tell me, well, I really need this person here on a different date because they're teaching a class, or they're because of a grant, which I know those are important, and there's some pretty, strict start dates lined in, we can obviously work on exceptions outside of these cohorts. But again, please reach out to me if you have any concerns. For right now, are there any questions?
Great. Thanks so much, Amber. Let's see. I wanted to alert you all about an exciting new resource for teaching available through WVU's Teaching and Learning column, Learning Commons. You may have seen the little blurb on the screen. Basically, in partnership with the Association of College and University Educators, WVU is offering all instructors, including graduate teaching assistants, the opportunity to pursue a certificate in effective college instruction free of charge. This is the only college teaching credential endorsed by the American Council on Education, ACE. And as part of this opportunity, faculty will be able to participate in several micro-credential courses focused on learning and implementing evidence-based teaching practices. All courses will be cohort-based and delivered online. After completion of each course, each faculty member will earn a digital badge, and those badges can be stacked to fulfill partial or complete requirements for the certificate. The deadline to register for the spring 2023 courses is January 5th, and the TLC is offering an information session about this on December 13th, in case you have any interest in this. And you need to go to the TLC site to register. Finally, as we head into finals, I just want to remind everyone that this is a particularly stressful time of year for our students, and mental health issues continue to be significant at the university for our students, even post-COVID. So the university posted a story on eNews before Thanksgiving that provided information about all the mental health resources available to students and faculty. But if you didn't have a chance to read that email or need a handy reminder, the information can be found on the mentalhealthwvu.wvu.edu website. I also want to acknowledge that this is a stressful time for faculty and staff, and to remind you all about the service that WVU offers through the WVU Faculty and Staff Assistance Program. It is a free and confidential service. So I just want to remind you that that is available to you, and that we hired another full-time counselor last year to be able to also address faculty mental health concerns. Also, faculty and staff, you have access to a number of recorded workshops that were offered last year that focused on mental health and self-care. These are still very timely. The session topics include self-compassion, meditation, and mindfulness, to name a few. And you can find those virtual sessions on the WVU Faculty and Leadership Development website. And last but not least, I want to let you know that we have hired a new president for West Virginia University Tech. And we will be announcing that in the next 2 or 3 days. So stay tuned. We're very, very excited about this candidate. And that truly is my very short report. Hey, Dave.
Hey, Dave Hauser, Eberly. I wonder if you might say a few words about the current fiscal budget. Last we got an update was way back, I think in September, where you said we lost a few folks on retention, but things weren't particularly bad. But the news recently has not been good. They've cut back on travel, cut back on some other things. And that doesn't seem like things have remained the same. So could you sort of give us an idea of what's going on in the current fiscal year?
Absolutely, Dave. And I honestly wasn't sure what had been shared already with faculty. And so we were letting our deans address their faculty and their departments. But essentially, we had a budget shortfall this year because we had a decline in enrollment, one that we did not expect. And that was partially due to retention and also to graduating a larger cohort of students. That has resulted in a budget shortfall for this year, which we have managed or are managing by reducing costs all across the university. The colleges have been asked to carry a smaller portion of that, which we've already communicated to the colleges, but we are looking ahead to next year and we're not sure what that picture is going to look like. We know that we will continue to have a large graduating class or two as we work through these larger cohorts, and we had smaller cohorts coming in. And so a memo was sent to the budget officers of the colleges and to all units across campus saying, we need you to continue to tighten your belt for this year and to reduce unnecessary travel, to reduce hospitality expenses, and to be careful about hiring. We didn't call it a hiring freeze, we're calling it a hiring frost, but really to look carefully at every position to make sure it is something you absolutely need for next year. We need to get through next year, and we're trying to anticipate that there may be some challenges, and rather than do what we had to do this year, which was to say, at the beginning of the school year, we're going to have to cut costs. We'd like to be as proactive as possible, so there are not those impacts at the beginning of the school year next year. So that's what I can tell you, Dave. I wish there was better news, but we are still really, struggling with the enrollment issues, but we're working very hard on retention, as are all of you, and that should help us. But again, we need to be careful in anticipation that it could be a tough year.
Had a busy day.
I've had a very busy day, yes, and I'm sorry I'm running. I was over preparing in light of cutting back on hospitality. I was over preparing the food for our event this evening, if that's all right. So I, it may not be as good as you're used to, but we'll get through it. I can assure you, as a matter of fact. And Dave, I appreciate that note. This is anticipatory. We feel very confident about our overall budget is very strong, but the issue is that we have come up with a shortfall. The legislature is coming into session. There may be some opportunities for us to gain some traction from them, a couple of other things, but we don't want to come back in 6 months or a year and say, well, gee, we're going to really have to go into more draconian measures. This is more anticipatory, but very wisely so. We always want to make certain that we are ahead rather than behind. And I think that we know that we'll continue to attract wonderful students and continue to be able to hire and maintain the qualities of our institution. But we also are looking at everyone to make certain that we're educating and retaining and having our students feel like that they have a very robust experience here at this institution. So I say that to all of you. Secondly of all, you're right. We did hire a new athletic director, and that has been, I must say that for about 3 or 4 months, as you know, our football team has not performed at the level that I think that everyone expected. There are all sorts of folks who have views on this. But we felt that it was important to get ahead of the concerns that people had. And so we have hired a new athletic director who I think if you heard his press conference today, you'll know that he's a very committed member of our university family already and comes with a high degree of credibility. And so I'm grateful for that. What I thought I'd do today is just to talk about one example of what we're doing as a university, because as you know, as a land-grant institution, but particularly as the flagship land-grant institution in the state, sometimes we don't get a chance to really understand in this environment some of the impacts that we are having, our multidisciplinary response to the opioid epidemic. As you know, West Virginia has unfortunately been at the apex of the opioid epidemic. And so this is one of our best examples. And I'm pleased that our Institute for Community and Rural Health will use $1 million to continue expanding resources across West Virginia to the Rural Communities Opioid Response Program. Now, this program is a multi-year initiative funded by the Health Resources and Service Administration of U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. And this opioid response program addresses barriers to prevention, treatment, and recovery services for substance use disorder. And because of the effectiveness of our faculty and our leadership, we have received yet another $1 million grant. The first funding cycle lasted from 2019 to 2022, and now we are into the second cycle. And we're focusing on 9 rural West Virginia counties: Calhoun, Gilmer, Jackson, Pleasants, Ritchie, Roane, Tyler, Wirt, and Wood. And through this grant, the Institute will be able to continue its outreach and expand to include Doddridge County. And I must say that not only is it a grant, but it's been very effective. A new initiative is bringing our, and so it, as a health pillar, it's been very successful. A new initiative is bringing our literacy consultants together. And I've got some of my literacy colleagues over here with local schools and communities to reverse pandemic-driven early learning loss. One need only read the national press to know that our ACT scores have fallen through the floor. We know that many of our children have fallen at least a year or two behind in terms of their learning experiences. In rural West Virginia, this has been particularly difficult. So these plummeting reading scores are partially linked to the virtual learn from home model adopted when COVID-19 closed schools. Now our West Virginia Public Education Collaborative and our College of Applied Human Services are helping to resurrect literacy proficiency. 2 programs supported by the collaborative have based their approach on reaching beyond classroom walls, forming partnerships to support struggling students. In 2020, literacy scores plunged in Weirton in the Northern Panhandle. But in 2021, after the Read With Me Weirton program launched an after-school and summer tutoring intervention, reading and writing proficiency among students who had received a double dose of literacy instruction through tutoring jumped back up by the equivalent of more than 1.5 grade levels. So Read With Me Weirton focuses on delivering extra help after school and over the summer to first and second graders who score lowest on the STAR reading assessment. Meanwhile, at the Mary C. Snow West Side Elementary in Charleston, our literacy experts are working with the Building a Village program to meet students and families where they live, literally. And so Building a Village brings family-oriented literacy activities to 2 West Side housing complexes that many of the elementary school students call home. And the reason I bring these to you is that I want you to know that the work that is being done throughout this institution, but the impact that it is having on our state is extraordinary. And these 2 projects are just one of many that I could point to today. So, ladies and gentlemen, during this holiday season, at least I am certain that everyone at this institution, their thoughts turn to helping others. So I'm pleased that our university faculty, staff, and students work year round to help people. It is not just in the spirit of the holidays, but it's the spirit of every day. And so I appreciate all of that. Saying that, what kinds of questions can I answer for all of you? You've got a big day today in front of you. And by the way, our reception does start what time? 5:30? Okay, great. I'll be there.
Thank you, President Gee. We're excited to sample your secret family recipes. All right, so next we'll hear from Tracy Morris, Associate Provost for Academic Personnel, and Chris Staples, Executive Director for Academic Personnel, to update about the proposed faculty appointment, evaluation, promotion, and tenure guidelines. And following their presentation, we'll have an opportunity for questions leading up to the vote at the January 9th Faculty Senate meeting. Tracy, Chris, are you starting? Yep. Good. Are you shared? I think you are.
Right. Okay, thanks, Scott. So today, what we're going to try to cover with all of you is the why behind doing this, work to date, highlight some of the changes that we've made, address areas where we've received some feedback, and then a timeline on next steps, because we've heard a lot of questions about what that looks like moving forward. We can handle questions as we go. With that being said, it may be best just to kind of wait until the end because it may be addressed in one of the slides that we run through. So from a why perspective, just a second. Eric, can you help me out on your end?
Not changing.
Nope.
Yeah, here he comes. Slides aren't advancing.
I just use the arrows. I think you have to click on it first.
Thanks, Eric. Okay, so we're good now, Tracy. So the purpose was, we had not taken a look at the university procedure since 2014-15. So we're taking a step back to address those. And really, ultimately, we wanted to ensure that faculty were recognized and rewarded, and those processes match the university mission and strategic priorities. So we used an equity-minded approach, which I'll address in the next slide. But really, it was a focus on transparency, flexibility, and accountability. So many of you have already heard this with the town halls that we've went through, but just wanted to recap where we've been. So we conducted an external audit with Dr. Carrie Ann O'Mara, who's a national expert in equity workload and P&T guidelines. And that was done in fall 2020. So then we started work with a recognition and rewards committee, was comprised of 17 members across the university within the colleges and schools. And we reviewed portions of the university procedures line by line over the course of calendar year 21 and the spring 22 semester. Throughout this process, we shared it multiple times, whether it be with the faculty advisory committee, faculty senate exec, deans, vice presidents, as well as general counsel. So throughout this iterative process, we made changes to the proposed university procedures based off feedback. And some of those changes were even done prior to that first draft being shared with each of you on October 7th. So from August through October, as you know, we held 26 town halls, and this included the regional campuses. We introduced the draft university procedures on October 7th and held an open comment period through November 11th. Now, originally, we were going to hold all the town halls, provide context so that everybody knew what we were sharing and proposing. With that being said, we had a lot of feedback from all of you that you wanted to see the document earlier. So we made that change, ensured that document was up on October 7th. From a Qualtrics form and the comments, we received 110 comments. The three top areas were tied around the buckets of ratings, non-continuation, external reviews, and criteria. Again, throughout the process, whether it be the town halls or through the Qualtrics form and the feedback that we received. Additional changes were made to the university procedures. And you can see obviously those changes because they're posted, both a final draft currently on the academic transformation website, a clean draft and one within track changes to show what has been changed throughout the process. Now, in a couple of slides, I'll address this last bullet point, but we received questions about what is the Big 12 peers doing, aspirational peers from a standpoint of non-continuation and what that looks like. I'll highlight some of those changes in just a second. So overall changes, incorporating language to recognize and credit public community engaged work, trans interdisciplinary work, as well as DEIJ work, and ensuring that if an individual faculty member does this work as part of their service areas, that they're recognized for that work was one of the key changes that we had. Requiring formative and summative feedback on annual and cumulative reviews. So on the next slide, it talks a little bit about post-tenure review, but in essence, we said if we're doing the right things on an annual review process, we do not need a post-tenure review process. Requiring absolute criteria rather than meets or exceeds. So the current document more or less says that you have to meet or exceed recently promoted peers, normally in the last 1 to 2 years. We felt as though that was a moving goalpost. So in absolute criteria is when a faculty member is hired within their offer letter or a follow-up MOU, they know exactly what that goalpost is as they move towards their next promotion and or tenure. And then overall, just making the processes, procedures more transparent within the document. Now, changes made in response to feedback. I highlighted a couple of these already, but just remove post-tenure review. So there was conversation prior to the original document being posted that every faculty member would have to go through a 5-year increments, a post-tenure review after they had been promoted. Again, we felt as though that was not needed if we were doing the right things with an annual review process. Allowed flexibility with external reviews for non-tenure track faculty. So within this flexibility that not all 4 external reviewers have to come from an R1 peer institution. Rather, they could be from teaching institutions, or it could be the case that 2 of the external reviewers are from the university, but outside of your department or unit. We adjusted timelines, as I've addressed here, based off of feedback from faculty throughout the process, ensuring that it was transparent and meeting the needs that you were asking for from a standpoint of seeing the document and adjusting the time frame of when the vote will take place. Replaced must with may when recommending non-continuation. So this was a change that was made once again based off of feedback. What I'll also note is when we think about the unsatisfactory ratings, it was originally framed that if one received 2 unsatisfactory ratings, 2 out of 3 mission areas, that it would be a recommendation for non-continuation. Instead, we deleted that sentence, and it's if you have unsatisfactory ratings, regardless of how many, that a performance improvement plan would be set in place, again, to get the faculty member set up for success, back on track, meeting those minimum expectations. And we also removed the code of conduct language. All right, so Big 12 aspirational peers. Here's a quick list of the Big 12 aspirational peers that we contacted and or researched. Their online documents as it pertains to non-continuation. What I want to share with you is the main themes. 1, all of our Big 12 aspirational peers have some form of a policy, rule, procedure, process for the non-continuation of a tenured faculty member's appointment. Overall, that timeline ranges for as short as 1 year up to 10 years when you take into account each of these universities. 4 have a process that's faster, 6 are on par with the timeline we have, and 2 are longer. Half of the universities contacted included some form of a performance improvement plan that they spoke to. Some call it a remediation plan, some call it an action plan, but in essence, it's a performance improvement plan. And every university includes a form of faculty involvement in that non-continuation process. So I know we had received questions as it relates to AAUP, and really the idea behind this is that there are faculty involvement with, whether it be at some stage within the process. And if we think about our process here at WVU, we have faculty involvement at the department level, the college level, as well as the university level when we think about that promotion tenure advisory panel that exists that is in partnership with Faculty Senate. So I'm going to turn it over to Tracy.
I'd like to address major concerns we've heard that the proposed guidelines could weaken tenure. Tenure was established to protect the freedom of faculty to engage in intellectual discourse without fear of censorship or retaliation, and we remain in strong support of those principles. Tenure, however, does not confer freedom from accountability, nor is it a guarantee of lifelong employment for an individual who has stopped meeting the minimum expectations as defined by their unit. As Chris highlighted, all our peer institutions have mechanisms for the non-continuation of tenured faculty who are not meeting their minimal responsibilities. The proposed guidelines do not introduce any limitations on academic freedom. They do not weaken tenure. On the contrary, greater transparency and clarity within the proposed guidelines will help support academic freedom by ensuring that personal speech or views that or an individual's views play no part in our evaluation procedures. One of the advantages of the proposed guidelines is that departments will be required to establish criteria for each rating level. Knowing the criteria in advance is good for the individual faculty member and for all those conducting evaluations. Having criteria for each rating promotes consistency across reviewers and greatly reduces the potential influence of personality conflicts or likability factors. Appropriate criteria will be determined by the faculty in each unit, and thus it is the faculty who are determining the minimum standards for continuation. The proposed guidelines do not make it easier to terminate a tenured faculty member, nor do they make it less likely for faculty members to engage in innovative, higher risk research. Higher risk research can be valued and credited within the department's evaluation criteria. In fact, the upcoming work on departmental guidelines may actually facilitate rather than hinder such work. In a number of conversations, people have asked for examples to help them visualize how more explicit criteria for each rating might work and how long it would take for someone to reach the point where non-continuation could be recommended. I'd like to illustrate this with the next two slides. One thing we've noticed is that faculty generally have an understanding of what they should do to receive an excellent rating in their department, particularly in the area of research. But there is much more ambiguity with respect to the other ratings, and very few are able to articulate the minimum standards for continuation. In conversations around the non-continuation language, a faculty may express a concern like this. In my department, we are expected to publish 2 to 3 articles a year. What if I'm conducting a longitudinal project or something goes awry in the laboratory and I miss that mark? Does it mean I will be fired, even though I'm working hard and actively engaged in my job? No, absolutely not. Walking through possible criteria to emphasize the difference between excellent and minimally satisfactory performance generally goes a long way to alleviate those concerns. This slide represents hypothetical criteria for a faculty member with 40% research assignment in a department that values journal publications and grant funding. Different departments will have different criteria, including for other forms of scholarship. I'm focusing on research today as that's been the area in which we've heard the most concerns and faculty have the greatest fears. These criteria reflect the use of a 3-year rolling average, which is something we would recommend departments consider as it helps address concerns faculty have expressed over having higher or lower number of publications in some years. In this example, though 2 to 3 publications per year would be considered excellent, a faculty member with a 40% research assignment would only need to publish once within every 3-year period to continue to perform at a satisfactory level. A rating of unsatisfactory would apply only after their publication output dropped to 0 and they had been given feedback in previous evaluations. Using the criteria from the previous slide, this table illustrates the shortest period of time it would take for non-continuation of a previously productive faculty member. This person would have had to have 0 research products for 4 years while being unresponsive to feedback and the reasonable provisions of a performance improvement plan. That is a considerable amount of time to not be performing 40% of one's assignment. Though non-continuation is a rare outcome, it has happened. And we do think it is better to be more clear about the process and to ensure that anyone at risk for non-continuation has received feedback and been given the opportunity to improve. So what are the most common outcomes for someone whose research productivity may have declined? By far, the preponderance of faculty are responsive to feedback. Another of the advantages of the proposed guidelines is the strengthening of our mutual responsibilities. Evaluation committees, chairs, and deans will be required to provide meaningful feedback, and our office will be working with you to ensure that occurs. Sometimes people get overwhelmed or experience a setback and can really benefit from help resetting and breaking larger goals into accomplishable tasks. That is our intent with the performance improvement plan. It is designed to help faculty get the faculty member back on the path to meeting the department's minimum standards for satisfactory performance. Directives under an improvement plan will be those that demonstrate progress, such as beginning data collection or submitting an article or grant application. I'd also like to note that in many cases, an adjustment to the workload assignment may be sufficient for the faculty member to maintain a satisfactory level of performance. Reassignment of even 10% from research to teaching or service may make a meaningful difference, depending on what criteria the department sets for satisfactory at 30% versus 40%. Pending departmental needs, the possibility of changing the areas of significant contribution may also be an option. It would be much better for such conversations to be had proactively before a faculty member becomes at risk for non-continuation. We've received some questions about due process and involvement of peer review. These processes have not changed within the proposed guidelines. A committee or panel of faculty is included at all levels, as Chris previously mentioned. As you know, it is possible for fully promoted professors to opt to only be evaluated by their chair. If the chair were to recommend non-continuation, the professor would then be evaluated by the departmental committee before the case moves to the next level. If after proceeding through all levels, the final decision is non-continuation, there are 3 levels of grievance that may be pursued under our state code. Some individuals provided comments around processes recommended by AAUP. In looking at procedures at various institutions, you will find very few that conform exactly to the AAUP recommendations. Importantly is whether there's faculty peer review, and indeed we have that. Before I hand it back to Chris to review the next steps, I would like to emphasize the proposed document provides for greater transparency, clarity, and safeguards in the conduct of our evaluations. With respect to non-continuation of tenured faculty, our currently approved guidelines merely state that participants at each level of review will exercise professional judgment regarding their assessment of the record in arriving at a recommendation or decision. Our existing guidelines do not require that a faculty member receive feedback prior to a rating of unsatisfactory, nor that criteria for ratings of unsatisfactory were specified in advance, nor do they ensure the opportunity for an improvement period. In each of these respects, the proposed guidelines are better for faculty.
Okay, so from a next steps perspective, Provost Reed, at the November Faculty Senate exec meeting, pushed back the vote until January 9th. So that's coming up. If adopted, colleges, HSC schools will align their guidelines with the university procedures. We're shooting for May 11th, going live July 1st, 2023. And then department division school guidelines should be completed by Friday, December 1st, 2023, going live July 1, 2024. Based off of the feedback that we've received, we are strongly encouraging the colleges, schools, departments to have an iterative process and have faculty involvement as they work through the creation of their guidelines. Now, on the next slide, we received questions about, well, if this is adopted, who does this apply to and what does it look like? So first, any newly hired or promoted faculty members would be impacted by this after the adoption date. So once adopted, anybody who's newly hired, the new procedures would apply, as well as anybody, let's say, that was promoted, then the new procedures would apply to them moving forward. Faculty members who opt out of the adopted university procedures will have until the 2027-28 cycle to seek promotion under the existing university procedures. Now, what that opt-out looks like from a process perspective, we still have to figure out what that looks like, but at least that gives you the dates to kind of think through what that would possibly be. Beginning 2028-29, the adopted university procedures would apply to all faculty. And the reason, or the reason we came up with that year is really what you think about the tenure track assignment, the 6-year probationary track. And then when we think about non-tenure track assignments, normally that promotion happens within that 6-year window. So that's why the 28-29. And then just please note that annual faculty evaluations obviously follow the unit guidelines per normal practice of what we have currently in play today. All right, so that's our presentation. And we are happy to post these after this session. So just for those who are taking pictures, no problem. So overall questions. I'll slide up.
So any questions for Provost team? Please remember to state your name and your unit. And please step up to the microphone just so everyone online can hear.
Emily?
So quick question, as far as existing faculty, the new guidelines, like if we're in the process, the new university guidelines don't apply to us till 2028, I think you said. Is that the same for our college and our school documents as well?
With respect to the promotion cases, the annual evaluations will always follow the department units guidelines. So once those are done for annual evaluations, you will have the criteria within your department or colleges, but the promotion guidelines reflect the current until that time.
Kim Kelly, School of Pharmacy, and I know you've answered a lot of my questions. This was helpful. It gave additional feedback. I'm chair of faculty welfare, and so we've had another meeting. One of the things that I saw that you were starting to address, but maybe would be helpful to have more information about, and the thing that I'm hearing the most concern about from the faculty, along with some of those other issues that you mentioned, is what does this rollout look like at the school level, at the HSC level, at the department level. And I know that you've given us some deadlines and some dates, but it would be helpful to understand kind of what that process looks like at those levels.
We're trying to decide whether to use a specific college as an example or just talk in general. As soon as the guidelines are approved, we will be communicating with the deans about the deadlines and encouraging them to begin discussions with faculty. As Chris mentioned, we want to make sure that faculty are included. At the same time, that the college level guidelines are being worked on. The level of detail that I think many of the faculty are interested, that occurs in the department documents. So for many of the colleges, it will be a matter of going through and cleaning up, making sure that there's not any archaic language in there. And much of the detail is within the departments. I will personally say that I don't think the departments have to wait until colleges are entirely done to begin having conversations. Faculty could be having conversations around what the criteria would look like in their department as at any time. So there would be somewhat of an overlapping timeframe.
And Kim, what I would add is just when we think about the university procedures, if adopted, there'd be key pieces that we'd be looking for, whether it be in the college, school, or department guidelines to ensure that they're aligned. And that would be part of the communication process with the deans as well as the chairpersons.
And so we do have a template and basically a rating sheet to make sure that all those are addressed, and we will be sharing those with the deans and department chairs as soon as document is approved, if approved. Yes, I am. We definitely would be encouraging that all those points are shared with the faculty.
Good afternoon. My name is Jenna Martin. I'm with the College of Law. I was wondering, and I apologize if this is in the document, I was out on medical leave, so I haven't had the chance to sort of see everything. But I was wondering if there has been any discussion around aligning the reviews with regard to SEIs and how SEIs are taken into consideration. Just because there's a whole bunch of research out there about how SEIs tend to negatively impact people of color and women. And so I was just wondering how that all works, because I know of at least a couple of examples of a review committee's evaluation being changed by a faculty, by the chair or department chair or dean because of negative SEIs. So again, if you could talk about that a little.
Okay, well,
So-
yeah, go ahead,
Okay.
Chris. and then I'll-
So Jenna, yes, there is reducing the focus on ESEIs. All right, now with that being said, some form of student feedback will exist moving forward, and that's tied to Board of Governors rules as that plays out. With that being said, I know that the TACO committee is also working on changes to that document to address some of the issues that you brought up, and that's working through the process now.
And so, excuse me if I may, so the idea is to align what's happening in TACO with what's happening in the evaluation process for review for faculty?
Yeah, putting focus on portfolios rather than a single point like ESEI.
Thank you.
Scott?
Hi, it's Scott Critchlow, Eberly. Two things from the presentation. Mentioning the peer institutions, is that in any kind of report that the faculty could have access to?
Scott, I put together a couple of slides that I can include with this slide deck, and we can post that to the academic transformation site.
Okay, thank you. And second point, actually, Tracy gets back to the thing I raised last time, which I think y'all at the time kind of said, well, it's unlikely. But in terms of this and tenure and the explanations for like why this would not weaken tenure, and sort of saying this because these things will be set at the department level. I'm still confused though about why AU can be given above the department level to start this. If part of the concern is in the current era, sadly, the politicization of a lot of hiring, not necessarily currently here, but you see that all around the country in a lot of state institutions.
Thank you, Scott. You would not be given to start this. This may be related to language when you say it's a dean or chair. And sometimes that is because we have units where they don't have departments. The dean is effectively the chair.
The sentence is levels. It's in that same section that's been so controversial the entire time. And the word there is levels. And to me, the word levels comes across as above the department.
No, it does, no. So the way it would function again, the first level evaluation is at the department level, and that's chair and committee. As you know, full professor might opt to only be reviewed by their chair and not the FEC. But if there was a concern around the faculty member's performance, that case would then be reviewed by the full FEC and before moving up to the college level. It sounds like you're saying there might be some, are you saying the language is unclear, or you're
just to me,
concerned that happens?
Right, just to me, the word levels conveys that, say, a future dean could give a U, no matter what the chair and department committee say.
Okay,
And that to me like creates issues for the tenure academic freedom
no,
concern.
correct. Yeah, the annual evaluation would never move up a level unless there was a concern about the faculty member's performance. There's unsatisfactory non-continuation votes. And I understand that. Also, I know sometimes the concern around the administrators. So I went and I looked at the data for all situations in which there was a split vote on continuation. And it's more likely for the negative recommendation to come from the faculty evaluation committee, and for deans and chairs to extend the faculty members, to continue the faculty member and give them an improvement period.
Well, I mean, good.
I know.
But-
That's
but-
trying to address your concern.
But I
expressed a
mean, but I
concern
think a
about
lot,
the chair.
but I think a lot of us, especially those who work in arts and sciences or say creative arts and look at the current political environment, expect that perhaps, especially public institutions, there might be pressure from above in future years that might not currently exist, might not recently exist, but could exist in the future, So I just say I would appreciate, make sure like that words like levels, I'd make sure that they're extremely clearly defined. Thanks.
Thank you, Scott. I'll definitely look at the wording. Do want to make clear that an annual evaluation process does not work at a higher level than would impose a rating. It has to start from the unit level. Within our procedures, it is not possible for a single administrator to effect the non-continuation of a faculty member. This is going to go through, this is where it goes through multiple levels. So after moving out of the department, we then have another faculty committee at the college level, and then we have the dean. And at the university level, we have another group of faculty at the university panel. So from my perspective, that's multiple safeguards to ensure that that wouldn't happen. As a tenured professor myself, I care about these things. I do understand the concerns, and thank you for expressing those.
Dave Hauser, Eberly. Maybe a little forward leaning here, but just picking up on what Kim said a while ago. As this moves to the units, assuming it passes in a month, what do you envision the process for writing the documents at the college level to look like? In other words, you say you want faculty involvement. Are you going to police the process to ensure faculty involvement? Does it look like a mini version of this, where a committee gets together at the unit levels and writes something and presents it? In other words, to ensure the fact that faculty are involved in writing those sort of college level documents, what is it you expect?
Well, we definitely want to give, we're giving strong recommendations to our deans and our chairs to facilitate process. You know, if I were working in the dean's office in Eberly, maybe I would try to go through, clean up the language, give faculty something to work from, right? That might facilitate things. Other dean's office might work differently. Mary Ann, would you like to say any words about your expectations of our deans and our chairs?
And as the provost moves up, I'll just note that, you know, recommendations are great. My doctor recommends I do a lot of things, but I don't necessarily. do,
Yes,
so.
Mary Ann is the boss.
So, you know, Dave, I just want to say that policing is not probably the word I would want to use when it comes to the behavior of the, you know, what we want to, how we ensure that we see good behavior regarding these issues. We work very strongly with our dean, or very closely with our dean colleagues, and we will be reviewing all the documents. And so there's another check in the check and balance system when we look at those documents. If we see anything that's crazy or doesn't make sense, we'll go back to the unit as well as the department. So, I mean, it's in everybody's best interest that we have documents that are clear and transparent about what the expectations are. So all I can tell you is we will work very closely with the colleges and the departments, and we will request additional information or changes where necessary. Okay.
Kim again. Scott's question kind of made me think about another constituency that we need to think about, and that is the teaching assistant professors, the clinical assistant professors, and the research assistant professors in terms of, that review process and the multiple levels. So my understanding is that they're evaluated every year. And what do you envision as the levels of review for them? I know that there've been.
The process would apply to all faculty at all levels and all types of faculty, all
Okay.
ranks.
Thank you.
Emily Murphy, College of Applied Human Sciences. So I appreciate the discussion about highly recommending and all those. Is there any way that we can just have the language that faculty engagement is required at the college and the departmental level? And that just with that word required, I think that would alleviate a lot of kind of angst amongst faculty. And then how that looks could be perhaps different at each college or department level, but some sort of faculty engagement required in the process.
You know, in hearing this, I hope faculty are communicating with their deans. and with their chairs. We've heard a lot of these concerns. I'm not always certain they're flowing to the people they may be directed at. And so I hope you're doing that. And again, I think it'd be easy for me to say, yes, we can say it is required. That's why I deferred to Mary Ann, although I don't have it in my authority to perhaps make that requirement.
I mean, you're, the- I mean,
But I do think we're going to have our eyes and ears open. We're going to be working with units. Very happy to work with any unit on helping facilitate the process. And so we will be having these conversations, and I'm certain we'll be hearing if things are not rolling out the way that we expect them to.
So I mean, I just want to say, as a former faculty senate chair and having been involved in faculty senate for many years, the root of all evil comes down to communication and how things are communicated. And a lot of times it's like the game of telephone. So I think that if you make some of these communication processes and making sure, I mean, I just think that like using language like required so that the deans know that they need to, engage faculty in this process.
Definitely.
It shouldn't be like policing it, and it shouldn't be a negative thing. I mean, we're requiring faculty engagement should be positive. So that's just my 2 cents, and I know we all have it.
No, understood. And I do want to continue to reiterate that where the most detail will be, where the items that are perhaps of greatest concern to the faculty member are in the department documents. You are your department. You have faculty meetings. That's where the conversations will be being had for developing those guidelines.
Hi, I'm Megan Light from the College of Creative Arts. So you mentioned in the slideshow that you had a lot of feedback from TAPS, specifically, I think related to the use of external reviewers as we're going up, but you didn't talk about that. And I wondered if there had been any movement on your part in getting rid of those reviewers, because that's the overwhelming majority of what we've heard from TAPS specifically, but if you could give us some insight into what those comments said and what your movement has been on that position.
Okay, so from an external review perspective, when we start thinking about non-tenure track, you are correct. As we move through the process, we have teaching assistant to teaching associate that would be impacted with the new university procedures, as well as the librarian track. The other tracks that currently exist already have external review processes in place. So service track does it from service instructor all the way through service professor. We have clinical associate with external reviews to clinical professor. So those were I guess the key constituents that would be impacted. Talked a little bit about the flexibility with the external reviews earlier from a standpoint of not all having to be from an R1 research institution. Rather, there could be teaching institutions, as well as 2 out of the 4 potentially being outside of the unit, but still internal to the university. I think the pieces here that we want to keep in mind is the timing aspect of it. So if these were to be adopted here, January 9th, anybody who's currently within that teaching assistant professor rank could seek promotion under the old guidelines prior to the new guidelines being adopted, and they'd be at that teaching associate professor level, which in our current document requires that those external reviews take place. But I think it is fair from a standpoint of we need to encourage deans as well as chairpersons when we think about allowing and having those opportunities for those teaching assistant professors to attend conferences and to build those networks when we start thinking about external reviews, because that's an important piece of the puzzle. So those conversations will continue to take place. And the other piece of this is similar to what Extension has had to do over time is how do they develop those lists and who are those external reviewers? We know that that's going to take some work both on our end as well as the department and colleges to identify who are those individuals and who are those colleges, schools that can help build out those lists. And once they're built, the process itself moves very smoothly. And I would use Extension as an example there.
Lisa DeBartolomeo, Everly College of Arts and Sciences, and you're going to have to answer a question, follow up to Megan's question. It kind of seems like we're putting the cart before the horse when it comes to changing the requirement for external reviewers to go for librarians or for teaching assistant professor to teaching associate professor. And here's my thinking. So you want to put into place a culture and a network of support internal to the institution that will help TAPS build those networks extramurally, that will help them have some travel funds so that they can go to conferences, so that they can build the national reputation that they would need in order to have successful external reviews, right? But until we have that in place, and until we have enough of a track record for people to build on, it seems premature to expect them to do the one thing before all the mechanisms are in place to help them do that thing. And I think that that's one of the biggest stumbling blocks for the group of teaching professors, and overwhelmingly the feedback that we got among the Commission on Faculty Enfranchisement, that it's all well and good to say, okay, well, here's this far distant goal that we're trying to achieve. But in the meantime, people are really going to have a hard time getting to that destination until the culture has been built and until the supports are there, right? So instead of saying, we'll put those in place, we're going to have you do external reviews, why don't we put those in place? And then when all of those mechanisms are underway and functioning, then we begin to have people do those external reviews. Does that make sense?
I think what you expressed makes sense. From another perspective, service track faculty already do this at all levels. And teaching faculty moving from associate to full do this. And we've been able to demonstrate that has worked. It's been successful. And we would like, as much as we can, to have parallel processes across all faculty. So right now, this is a select group that's not, has a different set of procedures. So I guess I'm just not seeing where, since it has worked, I've done a lot of these, I've seen reviews for other people, it's been successful. Mary Ann can say some more.
Lisa, I want to add, that's why we've added the opt-out clause. So the reality is you could have 6 years before you are under these, you follow these guidelines. I will also say, just from my own experience, that I have seen teaching faculty who do go to conferences, who do network, and we're only asking for 2 reviews that are external to the institution. So, I mean, I think the opt-out clause does answer that concern, because that's up to 6 years where you could be operating under the current guidelines and building those networks.
I think the opt-out clause is helpful, but I also think that part of the contrast between service faculty and teaching faculty is that service faculty have normally at least a 10% research assignment, which enables them to do some sort of external facing work that teaching faculty tend not to do. And yes, there are teaching faculty who do present nationally, or like Heiko, who chair statewide organizations and have that external facing presence. But if you're in a unit that does not enable that and that does not support that, it's very difficult to build that external facing reputation. And I think that I would argue you're correct. We should all have the same sort of expectations, but we should all have the same opportunities, the same support, and the same resources to get us all to that place. And that's not present yet.
Understood. I mean, clearly it's there at the associate to full level. So
And
I'd be
it's very
curious how that happens.
It's very hard.
Right.
So we've started a mentorship program. When I went up for promotion from teaching associate professor to teaching full professor, I was the first person to do that. And it was extremely difficult to find external reviewers, to get those external reviewers to agree to review my file. And this is an experience shared by my colleagues who have also gone up for promotion to full, because we have not had the benefit of the same culture of externally reviewing our colleagues' work that our tenure track colleagues have already expected, right? If you're in the tenure stream, You know that when you're asked to do an external review of someone, that's part of the job, right? That's an I scratch your back, you scratch my back kind of expectation of the culture. That is not part of the culture for teaching faculty. And often when we go externally and we ask a professor wherever, not even necessarily at an R1, they may look at our record and they say, well, I don't really know how to evaluate that, or I don't really have time to do that. And so the people who have gone up for promotion have gone through huge, long lists of people who they've asked and who have said no. And you can ask chairs and you can ask FECs and you can ask people who've gone up for the promotions. It's challenging.
And I hear you, and it's also challenging for tenure track faculty.
Oh,
And I
sure,
can tell you,
sure.
I've been in that position where I've had to send out 50 letters. I mean,
Sure.
ultimately. So I hear what you're saying. We're going to try to make that as smooth as possible. And it's really just that last group of teaching faculty that we want to cover with the new policy. Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
Hi.
Heidi Samuels,
Oh.
which one? Heidi Samuels has a question online. She's been waiting. So Heidi, you want to ask your question?
Hi, Scott. Heidi Samuels here. I'm a senator for Potomac State College. My question is in reference to the criteria for each level. And thank you all for that illustration example of research. So I was wondering, will the teaching area and the service area also have to have specific criteria for evaluation? That's part A. Part B is it standard procedure for the workload document to be created from the P&T document? Or is it okay for the workload document to come before the final P&T document is even complete?
On question one, yes, the criteria for all, for teaching, research, and service will need to be specified. And there should be some correspondence between workload documents and the guidelines, in the sense that the workload documents are saying, what are the sorts of things that count for various percent effort?
Good, Heidi?
Thanks. Yes, perfect.
Amy Hessel, Geology and Geography. So I served for a number of years on Faculty Evaluation Committee and was chair for a number of rotations. And I have a question about this: 4 external reviewers and 2 can be from WVU. And I think I might have an unpopular opinion on that. So that applies for all cases or just the teaching?
Just non-tenure track from assistant to associate.
Gotcha. Good, thanks.
Dave Hauser, Eberly, I was delighted to hear you talk about parallel processes across all the different ranks and all the different categories of professors, and thus the occasioning external reviews for the teaching faculty. Does that mean that a move towards tenure for those folks is in the offering as well, since we want to parallel all these processes?
Okay. Mary Ann, do you want to say anything? If not, okay. So from a standpoint of tenure at this point in time, that is not available to us, but we approached it more from a longer term contract perspective, being the 3, 6, and 9-year contracts, depending on the rank of that non-tenure track faculty member.
Would like to add that when a tenure track assistant professor goes up for promotion, it's up or out. And if a promotion is not successful in our other tracks, they typically continue on and try again.
So, I will just say that, and Dave knows, expanding tenure is not necessarily something our board is focused on right now. But we have, unlike other institutions, offered these longer contracts. And we, as part of this process, librarians would also could be extended longer contracts. And in terms of salary parity, we have been working towards that. And I will tell you that some colleges have made decisions when there have been funds available for pay raises to focus in intensely, or I would say intentionally, on bringing up the non-tenure track faculty to higher salaries. And that is, something that institutionally, but also happening at the college level and the department level. Well, the college level, I should say.
Heiko Tausborg, World Languages. I want to ask a question that applies to every track, but something that came up in our department as a concern that really, I think it affects everyone. So, and this is about the evaluation of teaching, where we want to de-emphasize or move away from SEIs in the future, and replace that with a teaching portfolio that includes peer reviews of our teaching, potentially, right? So what's the thinking on, so that's administrative work, right? We would visit our colleagues' classes, do a review, write an observation, and we'll have to do that multiple times probably to help each other out. How will that be accounted for? I mean, that is an administrative cost, essentially. So what are your thoughts on that? How will we move forward with that to account for that time that we will then spend?
So the guidelines will require one evaluation. And that I suspect most of your departments would consider your effort to evaluate your peer in your service. Right? So you would be credited for that activity. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, Tracy, and Provost Reed. So the next item on the agenda is my report. So as you know, the vote on the PNT procedures is scheduled for the January 9th meeting. And I want to just make clear again, we can't vote to amend the document itself. We will be voting on a resolution to adopt the proposed revised document. That amendment, that motion can be amended. And we would debate and vote on any amendments to the resolution during that discussion. Would ask that if you are thinking about proposing a motion to amend our resolution, let us know. That helps us prepare the documents so we can have them up on the screen, the revised text, and we can help move that process smoothly during the January meeting. And I encourage senators to continue engaging with the faculty in your units to get their feedback and input leading up to that vote. We've heard some questions since the last salary increase about salary information and compa ratio. So I reached out to Talent and Culture, and I was informed by Rebecca Meyer that the compensation team has been working with ITS to make faculty members' base salaries available. And if they have a market match or compa ratio, that information would also be available to the faculty member. Due to some IT challenges, technical challenges, they weren't able to roll that out this past year, but they're anticipating having that information available through the faculty profile in the portal early in the new year. We met with Evan Witters during the Committee on Collaboration recently, and Evan shared some information about how faculty could be more involved in recruiting and retention. So he shared some useful resources. I'm hoping to be able to schedule to have Evan come in later in the spring and talk a little bit more detail, but I'll share a couple of those resources here. Give me just a moment. So a couple of nice resources for faculty that are engaged in the mentoring role there's a service called Stepping Blocks that the university subscribes to. And that provides some up-to-date service called Stepping Blocks provides up-to-date job, salary, and skills information from graduates from West Virginia University. And you can go into that site in the outcomes tab. You can find actual information searching by discipline. A lot of useful information on salary ranges, different careers, what types of jobs that our graduates, the graduates from your units are working in, what types of skills they have in their jobs. Not very many faculty knew about this resource, but if you're in the mentoring role, that's some useful information. Students.wvu.edu is another resource that at the bottom of that webpage provides a comprehensive list of all of the student support services and campus offices that we offer to provide information to our students. And Evan noted that although this exists, many of our students don't actually know about it. So as you're advising students or providing mentorship, this is a resource that might be useful to them. Again, the provost mentioned mental health among our students earlier. There is a wealth of free training for faculty members to help you prepare to have these discussions with your students if you're approached, and the care team as well. Other things that we can do to help the students provide midterm grades, be willing to interact with them. Data shows that the faculty and the instructors are one of the top 2 resources students will turn to when they're looking for help or looking for information. Even more so than the professional advisors. That may shift as the professional advisors become more known to the students, but they'll often go to a faculty member. So lots of resources that can help us retain our existing students. And that has, as we've heard before, financial and budget implications for the university and for all of us. We will post these resources along with the minutes to today's meeting. Okay. All right, so we've also had some questions about changes or discussion about changes to the graduate faculty membership rules and policies. This is an effort that's been ongoing for some time. And recently, draft of those guidelines were shared with the graduate program deans. Some of those deans have shared those draft guidelines with their faculty members. I understand some may not have. The graduate council will be addressing those changes and discussing that document at their January 12th meeting. So if you would like to provide feedback or get more information, encourage you to reach out to your dean's office, first of all, and then you can reach out to graduate faculty members as well to get more information about that. And then finally, we would like to sort of increase the awareness within the Senate of the hard work that our Senate committees are doing, often behind the scenes. We have regular reports from a select group of those committees, but to kind of help get more information out, we would like to start making sure that all of our Senate committees, each one, gets an opportunity to present and make a report at a Senate meeting at least once a semester. We're hoping to get that started this spring, and Corey Hunt, our office administrator, will reach out to the chairs to kind of get some of those reports scheduled. So if you're a chair of a committee that doesn't often stand up and make a report at Senate, we'd like to give you an opportunity to talk about the work that is happening within your committee. That's important work. And we'd like to make sure that the Senate and the faculty as a whole are informed about the important work that you're doing. That completes my report. Are there questions for me? All right, so, and just one last reminder. We are going to sample President Guy's cuisine today at 5:30 at the Faculty Senate Holiday Reception. Right. So our next report is from our Curriculum Committee Chair, Lori Ogden.
Thanks. I have four for approval items today. The first is the new courses report found in Annex 1, the course change report in Annex 2, and then two new programs. The first is esports management and the second is sport leadership.
So we will bundle the new courses report, course change report, and the new programs into a single votable item. Are there any questions about Annex 1, Annex 2, the new program in esports management, and the new program in sports leadership for Lori? Hearing no questions, the question is on the approval of Annex 1, Annex 2, and the two new programs. All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand in Zoom. Any opposed? So those changes are approved. Thank you, Lori. Next, we'll have a report from the Chair of the General Education Foundation Committee, Lisa Bartolomeo. Lisa.
Hello again. Jeffco has been working on developing some clearer guidelines for folks so that it's very obvious what is and is not, what counts and does not count as a Jeff course. Going forward, we'll be putting out some clearer guidelines there, as well as some helpful rubrics for folks who will be applying for Jeff courses. And a little shameless plug, Dean Corey Ferris, the Dean of Students, is going to be hosting on January 23rd a student life fair modeled on the Education Abroad Fair, the Study Abroad Fair. We'll be hosting it on January 23rd, which is a Monday, in the Lair Ballrooms from 11 to 2. And it's essentially going to be tabling from all the units in student life to help educate all of us, faculty, students, and staff, about all the amazing things that student life folks do. They also have really awesome swag and fun toys and stickers. And it should be a really good way for all of us to get to know not only what they do, but also maybe network, meet some new people, and find some new opportunities for connections and service opportunities, because we need more of those, right? So thanks, Scott.
Thank you, Lisa. The next report was from our Taco Chair, Diana Davis. Diana had to cover a course, so I don't think she's made it today. So we'll move on. And the Committee on Committees does not have a report today. So next we'll hear from our faculty representative of state government, Eloise Elliott. Eloise.
Thank you. We have a meeting this Thursday with the ACF, and at that time we'll be finalizing our legislative agenda. So I'll have that available at the January meeting for your review.
Any questions for Eloise? Next, we'll hear from our Board of Governors representative, Stan Howman. Stan.
All right, we met in November. We received a clear financial audit from Clifton Larson Allen for 2022. We approved the acquisition of a new electronic research administration service, which should make life on campus much easier for those doing research. We received a budget update and an update on state funding allocations from Rob Alsop. We approved changes to Board of Governors Rule 1.4. Listened to a presentation by Lisa Martin, who's the staff Board of Governors representative, and other staff council members. And our next meeting is December 16th.
Are there any questions for Stan? Thank you, Stan. Is there any new business? All right, hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn? Second, we're adjourned. Hope to see you at the reception later this evening.